Hello, my name is Mitchell. Those 15 of you who follow my channel have probably noticed that this is not the type of content I normally publish. However, I thought I had something valuable to share on the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I didn't want to make a new channel for it. So, I have done a bunch of audio analysis, so I want to share with you my methods, so you can repeat this for yourself if you want, and my results. So I downloaded 6 different video files of the assassination. I know there are at least 3 more. I wasn't able to find them with audio. But we can draw, these 6 are already really interesting. So you can see those 6, I labeled them A through F. Let's see here. Here is a map. So A, B, C, D, E, and F. Kirk is denoted with a star, and there were 4 speakers set up. And I want to do, so I did 3 types of analysis on this audio. First, I did an attempt at echolocation. I'll share where that led. And then I looked at the sound of the gunshot itself, and then I also looked at the echoes that were heard at each of the 6 camera positions. So, first, I really want to know which of the 6 cameras heard the gunshot first. In order to do that, we need to do 2 things. But first, you might... a naive approach to doing this would be to watch the footage, see on which frame Kirk was shot, and then see when the sound arrived compared to that frame. But that doesn't work for a couple of reasons. So, a video file is comprised of 2 parts, a video stream and an audio stream. So the video stream is the series of images, and these are captured usually between 24 and 60 frames per second. And the audio stream is a sound file. And then these 2 are separately encoded and saved together in a video file and synced. So the first problem is that because these are separate, I cannot guarantee that the syncing is correct when I download the video from the internet. Because I do not know that the camera synced it perfectly, and when the footage is uploaded and re-encoded onto whatever website, that can mess up the sync. And so I really cannot trust that the sync is correct. The second problem is that the video file may be as slow as 24 frames per second, and at 24 frames per second, sound can travel 50 feet between frames, and I need to measure distances smaller than that. So, but the audio stream is good, the audio files. So I have extracted the audio files from the 6 different videos, and we're looking at the audio files. We're completely ignoring the video except to figure out where on the map everyone was. So these are the 6 audio files extracted. They are labeled A through F. You can see they're on the left. I will play A for you so you have some context.
Counting gang violence. Great.
Alright, so Kirk saying counting gang violence. The student, I assume he was a student, says great. And then there's a gunshot, and then there's some echo, and then the crowd reacts. And we hear that in all 6 of these. If I play D...
Not counting gang violence. Great.
So it sounds a little different because it's a different spot in the crowd, but all the same thing. And then we'll play one more E.
You're not counting gang violence. Great.
Okay. So these 6 tracks I have synced using Kirk's voice and the voice of the student who said great. So again, sound is kind of slow, and so the sound, Kirk and the student speak into a microphone. The sound comes out of these 4 speakers, and then the sound travels from those speakers to the various points in the crowd. And so each of these 6 listeners' microphones will hear those speakers at slightly different times based on their distance to the speaker. So over here, this is step 1. I have synced the audio perfectly so that all 6 microphones are hearing the speakers at exactly the same time. And these are perfectly synced up. I can play them all together.
Gang violence. Great. Counting gang violence. Great.
So those are all perfectly synced up. Of course, they should not be synced up because the sound arrives at different times to each of the speakers. So I have measured the distance from the nearest speaker to each of the listeners, and those distances are here in feet from the speaker. And then here is how much time it takes sound to travel this distance. And then compared to reference point A, I needed to shift the other 5 tracks by this amount. And so I did that over here. So this is before syncing them and after. So now the sound is not in sync, but the 6 cameras are perfectly in sync in time. And so if I play these together, you will hear a little bit of an echo.
Counting gang violence. Great. Counting gang violence. Great.
Just because they're playing at different times. So here the student says great in all 6, and then the gunshot arrives. That's the gunshot. So because these are now perfectly in sync in time, we can see who heard the gunshot first. And it was F. F is in the back of the crowd. I think I forgot to say at the beginning there of the video, the reason I want to push this out is because the official story is that the shooter was here. There are some theories that the shooter may have been in this building, and I find these theories to be somewhat compelling. There's also some theories that the shooter was in the crowd somewhere. And so comparing these 3 hypotheses, well, I think the sound will guide us to one conclusion. So first, as we see here, F heard the sound of the gunshot first, followed by E, and then A, B, and C, and then finally D. So you can see that here. F, E, A, B, C, and D heard it last. So if the shooter were in the crowd, then A and B should have heard it first, followed by C, D, E, and then finally F. But F heard the shooter first, so the shooter was not in the crowd. If the shot were over here, C should have heard it first, and then A and B, and then D, E, and F should have heard it at about the same time. But we do not observe that. F heard it first and D heard it last. If the shooter were over here, then it makes sense. F heard the shooter first, and then E, and then A, B, C, and then finally D hears it last. There is not line of sight from D to this spot on this roof. This building blocks the way. So that accounts for why D heard it so much later than the other 5. So, based on the shot timing, the evidence really looks like the shooter was in the back of the crowd, was behind the crowd, rather. There are 2 other types of analysis I want to look at. Before I get there, I was hoping to be able to use the shot timing to echolocate the shooter. Unfortunately, when I tried that, the results were kind of all over the place. Well, they weren't all over the place, but it was certainly not pinpointing any spot on the map. And I believe the reason that the echolocation fails is because just the crowd in the buildings were messing with the sound too much. For echolocation to really work, I have to assume that this is basically taking place in an open field. And as you can see, this is not an open field. So we can't echolocate. Alright, so the second level of analysis. The quality of the sound of the gunshot. So let's look at F first. So this is the gunshot here. Play a little more context. So it's just this super sharp crack. In mathematics, or at least in signal processing, this is called an impulse. This is not a perfect impulse, but it is quite good. So there's basically no signal over here, basically no signal afterwards, and right here there is a tiny spike with a ton of signal. So this is called an impulse. An important property of impulses is that they contain every frequency, high frequencies and low frequencies. And as an impulse interacts with an environment, travels through the environment, different frequencies will get absorbed at different rates. And absorbed and shifted. So as sound goes through a crowd, of course, the highest frequencies will be lost first, and the lowest frequencies will be preserved. So at F, we hear a super sharp crack. This is the sound of a gunshot downrange. When the sound arrives at A, this is the gunshot. It's no longer this really thin crack. It is spread out over, this is, a tenth of a second? And at B it is really spread out, at C it is really spread out, at D it is really spread out, and at E it is kind of weird, but also really spread out. So yeah. This is consistent, again, with the shooter being in the back and the sound being basically unmodified at F because there is almost nothing between them. Perfect line of sight. And then, well, there is a tree here. And then with all of these other points, the sound has to travel through a crowd first to get to them. So yeah. The shot was in the back. The third and last thing we can look at quickly is the echoes. Specifically, when the echo arrived and what the echo is like. So with A, there's the gunshot, and this is kind of an echo. Compared to the initial shot, the echo is kind of vague and spread out. It's not really clear. At B, we see the same thing. The shot is really clear, and the echo is kind of in here somewhere. This is the crowd reacting already. C, the shot is really clear, and the echo is quiet but fairly clear. At D. Oh, sorry, I was playing all of these together again. Yeah, so there's a little bit of an echo there, but not much. Where was I? D, this is the shot, and this is the echo. We'll come back to that one in a moment. At E, there is a really long delay between the initial shot and the echo. And at F, that's the shot, and these are really quiet echoes. So let's look at F first. If the shot came from over here or in the crowd, well, we've already ruled out the crowd. If the shot came from this building over here, F should have a pretty good echo off of this building, but instead the echo is really quiet and really fast. So it kind of, I imagine that the shot sounded here. Some of the sound echoed off of this building, and that is perhaps the first echo that we hear. Some would have echoed over here, but of course it would be nowhere near as loud as the original shot. With A, B, and C, if we zoom in here really close, you can see the space behind Kirk is open. This is an elevated walkway, and so that space, of course, won't echo. And even this back wall won't really echo because it is so close to them that it will be, the echo will kind of just be combined with the original sound of the shot. But we will hear an echo off of this. E, interestingly, hears a really late echo. I'm not really sure why that is. I'm not a sound engineer. Sorry. D is really interesting because the echo, this is D. We'll play this. The echo is louder than the original shot. And in fact, it looks like the original shot is an echo because it has two peaks. The only way this makes sense for the echo to be louder than the original shot at this point is for there to be no line of sight to the shooter, or a heavily obstructed line of sight. And if the shooter was here, indeed there is this building in the way. And so the sound has to get around that building somehow. And so the echoes, I would expect to be louder than the original shot. So again, to recap, F heard the shot first, followed by E, and then A, B, and C, and then D. That only makes sense if the shooter was back behind the crowd. We also know that the sound of the gunshot is quite pure at F and muddled by the crowd at all of the other points. And the echo at D seems to indicate that D has no line of sight to the shooter. And F barely has any echo, which seems to indicate that the sound is not echoing off of the back of the amphitheater here anywhere prominently, as might be the case if the shooter were in the crowd or over here. So, as much as I would like to validate some conspiracy theories, because, well, I do like... I am a fan of particular conspiracy theories, but the evidence does not point in that direction. It really looks like the shooter was here, as per the official story. I'm not going to opine on any other details of the assassination, because then I'll just be one other random voice on the internet, but the audio points here. So you can repeat all of this. Please let me know if you see any mistakes in my methods, and post them in the comments, and I will read them, and if I think you have a valid critique, then I will do my best to address it in a timely manner. Yeah, that's all I have. Have a nice day.